A portion of today's video is kindly sponsored by Factor.
This might sound really bad, but you absolutely have to have it and you're not cool if you don't. Is not a red flag. I know. Well, hey friends, it's Natalie. So glad you stopped by to hang out with me today for a Q&A. This is actually one of my favorite videos to make. It's fun to just be able to sit down and have a chat with you. In fact, 10 years ago when I started doing Q&A videos, we dubbed them Chatty Natty videos because I do like to get chatty, so this video might be a long one. Thanks to everyone who sent in questions over on my Instagram and Patreon page. I've got some fun questions, some things on the topics that I already cover here on my channel, like minimalism, homemaking, gardening, homeschooling, and then a few that I don't normally talk about. So let's get into the first one here. B.A. Weiser says, what is your favorite thing about your home? I love so many things about our home and the different sort of remodeling projects that we've done around it. This place looks so different than it did 3 years ago when we moved in. But more than that, I would say my very favorite thing is actually what the home itself has taught me about myself. I turned 30 in this home and I feel like that's really special and it's really significant. And I feel like I've really come into my own personal style, not just with like how I dress, but how I dress my home and decorate it. And I've never felt more at home with my decor style than I have just in the past couple of years, but the last year especially. It's really made me just dive into and fall in love with eclectic and vintage antique pieces to really sort of balance out more of the clean lines and more of the modern things that we might have in the house. I just feel like it's a really good mix. And I've always had a heart for other eras and vintage things and, you know, that nostalgia, but I never really brought it into my home until we were in this home. And that has to be my favorite thing because I feel most like myself than I ever did in any other home we've been in. Anna_Ray_ said, who is your favorite sister and why is it me? I love you, Anna. I have 3 sisters. Anna's my favorite today because this is hilarious. On that note, we're gonna take a quick break to hear from today's sponsor. Thank you so much to Factor for fueling me and for making today's video possible. You know it's a good day when that Factor box arrives on the front porch with fresh, never frozen meals that help us fuel our bodies and keep us going. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-heat meal kit with chef-crafted and dietitian-approved meals that are so delicious and nutritious. Factor takes the guesswork and the actual work out of meal planning and prep because each meal is ready to eat in as little as 2 minutes. Just pop it in the microwave or heat on the stovetop and you've got lunch or dinner. They actually even have some breakfast and brunch options ready so quickly. I love how easy it is to make my orders from the Factor website or their mobile app. You can choose from 35 different meals and 60 add-ons each week. And with that much variety, there's definitely something there for everyone. Even if you're like me and you have dietary or lifestyle requirements, they offer vegan and veggie options, low carb, high protein, and more. You can customize your order, add in extras or protein shakes, snacks, and even wellness juice shots. I started working with Factor over a year ago, and it was around that time that I decided to fuel my mommy muscles a bit better with some protein and good nutrition and generally more actual meals rather than just snacks and coffee. And it has really changed my life. Factor has been a really big factor in that situation to help me achieve my nutritional and fitness goals. I'm actually going to be talking a little bit more about this later on in this video, but honestly, food is fuel, and Factor gets it right without ever being boring or bland. If you'd like to check out Factor and help support my channel in the process, then head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code NatalieB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box, and then you get 20% off your next month of orders. That's code NatalieB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Murasaki123 says, how do you put 3 kids to bed at night? I say, go to bed. It is so much easier than it was when they were really little. I mean, there's no diapers, and they are the ones who are brushing their own teeth at this point with some, supervision and checks, final checks by mom and dad. We do have a really good, fun nighttime routine that I really look forward to. Okay, so this might sound really bad, but I was never that mom when my kids were babies and toddlers that looked forward to our nighttime routine. It felt very stressful, even though it was like it had peaceful elements of it. It was always kind of like a mad dash to the finish of the day, and no amount of lavender baths and story time and cuddles and singing before bed prevented all the wake ups and the interruptions throughout the later evening for my husband and myself. And I wouldn't go as far to say that I resented it, because they're my babies. But I will say nowadays it has gotten so much smoother and easier, and just like another part of our day. Hey kids, time to go to bed. They brush their teeth and get pajamas on if they want to wear pajamas that night. And then they all 3 pile in my bed. And sometimes we will watch reels on Instagram. We've been really into like bottle smashing videos lately. That sounds so bad. And I know like screens on your eyes right before you're gonna go to bed is not the best thing, but it's just kind of been our thing lately. We've enjoyed like cat videos, bottle smashing videos. We have a very select few accounts that we watch. We also love Cooking for Levi. Oh my gosh, that account is so adorable. A couple of the nights of the week that we do our cuddle time, we will watch some of those videos from our favorite creators on Instagram, as silly as that sounds. And then the majority of the nights, we're just talking and kind of debriefing after the day. And we always do some prayer time and prayer requests before I send the kids off to bed. Weston typically does their final tuck in and kiss, and he also checks in with them at the end of the day. And we say goodnight, and they sometimes, if it's early enough, they'll have quiet time in their rooms. But it's lights out at 8:30, and they're probably up and talking, sometimes, brawling until 9 o'clock. But that's just what life looks like right now with twin 10-year-old boys and a 7-year-old little girl. Sometimes they'll go into each other's bedrooms. There are easier nights than others, but it's really honestly not something that I even think about anymore. It's just like when I say, hey, it's dinner time, it's hey, it's bedtime, and we do what we normally do. This is kind of along the same vein. Lynn's Mac 30 says, is homeschooling becoming easier or harder as the kiddos get older? Kind of like the nighttime routine, things have definitely gotten easier, but with the higher grades that they're in now that they're out of, preschool, kindergarten material, things have definitely gotten more challenging when it comes to our attitude towards school and the discipline of sitting down and doing school. The material that I'm teaching is not difficult for me to teach. I can teach long division and multiple digit multiplication problems and times tables and all of that in my sleep. The challenge is watching my boys go through material that's a bit harder to master than just their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s when they were younger. But I mean, that's the beauty of school and learning, is that it typically builds upon itself. So it's not like they were doing ABCs and 1, 2, 3s one night and then they woke up doing long division the next day. But their reaction to what they have to do in their school might make you think that that's the case. So I would say the most challenging part right now is not the material, but actually just the attitudes that we deal with. That is totally normal and typical for any kid when they're faced with some challenge. But we've had a really good school year and we've overcome a lot of those challenges, and a lot of things has just fallen into place and really clicked for them. It was a year of a lot of triumph for us, which I think some content creators, in an effort to be relatable, they'll only talk about like the negative and the bad, and how their life is a hot mess. And we have negative and we have bad and we have hot messes in our life. But when I look back on this school year, through the ups and the downs, I'm really encouraged by those ups, and I'm not afraid to just say we had an amazing year. And I think one of the biggest parts of that is the fact that my kids are getting older, and it actually is getting easier, and we're actually looking forward to doing school the next day. As much as they will sometimes protest cracking open that book, by the end of the day everything always works out, and it's been a really good year. It's been very enjoyable, very, very rewarding. Shanna33033 says, what vacations do you have planned for the year? So we already took our big one, which was actually just Weston and myself going over to Ireland. We did that back in April. It was such a wonderful trip. We had a wonderful time, and we are so excited to take our kids back there sometime. We're hoping within the next couple of years all of us will be able to make the trip over. It was my first time ever going overseas, Weston's first time as an adult making that trip and not, going with mom and dad. So it was a big first for the both of us, and we wanted to navigate that trip with just us as adults. But now we feel confident that we know the ropes and we'll bring our kids at some point. Weston actually has family over in Northern Ireland, and so we did Northern Ireland and the Antrim coast, and then we went through the western coast, kind of the wild Atlantic way of Ireland, and it was just wonderful. We could have stayed for another week and still had things left to explore and do. We barely even scratched the surface. So someday we'll be taking our kids back. As far as this year, we do have a couple of trips in the works. One of them is more like a volunteer work trip. It's not going to be relaxing or like a vacation for us, but we are all going. We're very involved with our church's youth ministry. Weston has been for years, and so he's going to be like a camp leader, camp counselor at our church's high school camp, and I am traveling with them to be the worship leader. And we're both, it's just a volunteer sort of situation. We love serving with the youth, and I love serving in worship ministry, and I have done so for a very long time. And so we're actually taking our kids with us because they're welcome to join as leaders' kids, even though they don't quite meet the cutoff for a high school age camp. But there will be other leaders' kids there, and they're going to have kind of their own little set of activities and stuff to do during the week that we're there. And then another trip that we have planned, we don't know exactly what date. Maybe in August, maybe in September. We have a family reunion in the works for Weston's side. They live in southeastern Idaho in the Teton Valley. And so we might be going over to do just the quick family get together for a couple of days, or we might extend the trip just depending on Weston's work schedule, and also do Jackson Hole and possibly go into Yellowstone. So we just have to see, and of course like wildfires and stuff like that during that time of the year might also be a factor in that situation. So we don't want to put ourselves in a bad situation with how crazy things can get over there. So we're just kind of gonna play that one by ear. But as far as trips go, that's pretty much it for this year. This is from over on my Patreon page, Eveline Vanadelle. Is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry if I butchered that. How to start gardening or growing your own veggies. It seems so overwhelming. 2 people liked that comment, and then Tess Underwood replied to it. This is my question also. I remember when I started my garden 3 years ago, it felt completely overwhelming. And I've talked about this in some videos, recalling that time where I told my mom as I was just setting out, like, I'm just gonna do a couple things, because when you look at someone who has an established garden and has continued to like cultivate it and to expand the number of crops and different things that they're growing in the garden, it can feel really overwhelming to not even know where to start. So my suggestion for that, because I've totally been there, my first year I was like, what is it that we actually eat? And how can I grow that? And then along the way, I just added to the crops as I felt more confident in the little things that I did here and there. I will link some of my favorite gardening channels below that are very educational and helpful. Of course, when you look at a gardening channel, you also have to consider where they live. And if you see someone growing huge watermelons and you're, in Minnesota, probably not going to work out. I can't grow melons here unless it's in some sort of like really controlled greenhouse or like high tunnel sort of environment. So you have to do what's realistic for you and your growing zone. So those are the two pieces of advice. Find out what you like to eat. So don't grow things that are just gonna rot on the vine because you don't actually eat them. That is very discouraging. And also figure out your growing zone and then go from there. Samantha Maria 33 says, can you do a cartwheel? Can I still do a cartwheel? Hold my coffee. Yep. She's still got it. Whew. And now she's seeing stars. Post-COVID pots, man. Not fun. Mayuri Valanji says, for minimalism, where to start? Kitchen, decor, clothes, toys, grocery. I feel so overwhelmed. I hear you. And I felt so overwhelmed. In fact, when I started my Messy to Minimal series, it really wasn't because I thought this series would do well on my channel. It was kind of an accountability partner of sorts to say, I'm setting out, I'm doing this. And the fact that I put it out there for thousands of people to watch was the motivation to keep going, because I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start. And I just thought to myself, what room or category would feel best right now to have under control? You might have a different answer to that question than I did, but I knew right off the bat that it was decluttering my kitchen. And that's where I started the first Messy to Minimal episode that I ever posted on my channel. And the rest is history, because just starting there, where it was a really satisfying, high impact zone for me to take care of, it really inspired me to keep going. Once I got that kitchen decluttered, I got rid of so much stuff in that first episode from just my small kitchen that I had. And the next day, going into my kitchen and being able to open the drawer and not have it jammed because it was too stuffed with things, and open a cabinet and not have stuff fall out at me, it was inspiring. And it was like, I want the rest of my house to feel like this. And so I would encourage you to answer that question for yourself. That's where I would suggest that you start, wherever it's going to have the biggest impact to your life, where you are right now. Not your ideal self, not your ideal life down the road or what you're anticipating, but who you are and what your house is doing right now. Also from Patreon, Sarah Wallace says, first, is this 21-second video at your property or your mom's? It's pretty. It was at my property. Thank you very much, Sarah. Second, do you have a maintenance schedule for cleaning your home? I lack motivation to stick to something, so I like to try different methods to try to find something that works for my ADHD brain. ADHD brain here as well, and I know that there's a wide variety of what works for different ADHD brains all along that spectrum. But for me, I have actually found that trying to follow a plan makes me almost rebellious against said plan, and I actually get less done because of it. Maybe that doesn't make me a very good influencer. I hate that term, but I also don't like influencers. I'm not talking about fellow creators out there who are doing a good job, just the culture of telling you that you need to follow a plan, or telling you that you need this tool or this gadget in order to have things work in your life, makes me bristle. And I'm not saying that I've never recommended a product, because man, I love my powered cleaning spin mop, which I actually found from an influencer, but it's actually more so being told what to do. I'm someone who doesn't like to be told what to do, yet I'm an avid rule follower. I don't know how those two parts of my personality ever came into the same person. I feel like I have to follow a rule, which makes me resent rules, which makes me not want to be told what to do. I guess maybe that's the pattern that it follows. So when it comes to maintaining my house, it's very much an as-needed sort of thing. And unfortunately, that means that sometimes tasks go too long, because my threshold for as needed is different than the person making the list. But it's my house. And so I want to give you permission to do things the way your brain is kind of automatically doing them. I have a couple of non-negotiables for the day, like dishes and laundry have to be done, or else I will lose my mind and things pile up. And because we actually have a more minimal number of dishes and laundry, we run out if we don't wash them. So those are the things that are like absolutely have to be done every single day. Other things that I like to get done every day is getting the floors clean. Getting a robot vacuum has actually totally changed the game for that. So that is a gadget that I recommend. Next week's video is sponsored by my favorite robot vacuum, but I always try to conduct my sponsorships in a way that doesn't make you feel like you absolutely have to have it and you're not cool if you don't. And then just to further answer that question, I have weekly tasks that are also non-negotiables, kind of like I have my daily non-negotiables, which is making sure that the bathrooms are wiped down and disinfected and reset. And then also making sure that my bedroom at least once a week is fully reset and cleaned and dusted and all of that. We worked so hard on that bedroom remodel. It'd be nice to walk into a clean bedroom. Madeline Jazek says, do you incorporate gardening/homesteading into your homeschooling curriculum? Yeah, so the way I look at curriculum is from a very, holistic, overarching point of view. And since my kids were little, I've always viewed everyday life and domestic life, even stuff that we do outside of the home, as an opportunity to learn. So in our school time, we're not necessarily cracking open books and curriculum material where we're reading and answering questions, kind of like a typical schoolwork, but rather when we head out to the garden, which my kids, all three of them, love to join me outside as we're working on projects. In fact, my boys actually just worked to help me set up our tomato bed because it's time to plant tomatoes and peppers out there. If we find something or come across a weed that we don't know what it is, or wonder about different types of the plants that we're planting, or whatever it is that we're doing, we are constantly researching and learning more. I kind of let it be child-led in those situations. I'm the one leading the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. But as far as other interests go, a lot of it is student-led, where their questions are the thing that spark the research and the further learning. Like, we had some birds show up because we actually changed the bird seed in our feeders, and we had never seen them before, and so we tried to identify them, and then that threw us on a whole tangent of library books of Pacific Northwest birds and bird watching and fun stuff like that. And then usually one thing leads to another, and we end up learning so much more than if I, at the beginning of the school year, planned out, we're going to learn about this, then we're going to learn about that, because that's a little bit, in my opinion, for the way our brains work and the way I like to teach and the way they like to learn, it's a bit restrictive for us versus just kind of letting the year outside of those core subjects sort of take its course and lead us around to the extra things that we will learn and research and study a little bit more. So yeah, it's incorporated into our homeschooling, but not really as a curriculum, more so as just a lifestyle. Okay, here's a good one. I loved this question. Thomas Katie said, what's 5 random topics you could give a talk on for 30 minutes? 30 minutes each? And are these topics that I actually don't normally talk about in my YouTube videos? Because if so, I could talk about beeswax candles, how to make them, their benefits, how they are vastly superior to any other kind of wax for candles. I could talk about how to host small casual get-togethers up to lavish parties without losing your mind. In fact, I actually have talked about that one, and I will link that video below. I could talk about old movies and actors, old Hollywood, black and white films, like old Christmas movies, old musicals for way longer than 30 minutes. Oh, female metabolism and fitness. Don't even get me started on this one. In fact, I'm just gonna link a podcast that absolutely changed my life. Like this specific episode, I don't endorse everything that these bros say on their podcast. In fact, content warning because they swear a lot. But this one specific episode changed my life. It opened my eyes to the lies that women have been sold for decades upon decades, especially in the 80s when it was all about cardio and starvation and really lightweight and high reps, when the reality is if we were building our metabolism with good sources of protein and more calories, I know, lifting heavy weights to build that muscle mass, which muscle burns more calories than fat does, oh my goodness. It is so freeing. I could go on and on. I'm not going to, but life-changing. Finally, how to plan a wedding. I've done a lot of wedding coordination and wedding planning for people. I used to do a lot of this actually right after my husband and I got married, before I had kids, and then I've kind of been getting back into it in the past few years now that they're a little bit older. Oh, I love planning weddings. And I actually think I'm pretty good at it. So that is definitely something that I could talk a lot about, which brings me to one of my anonymously asked questions. So I will keep their name private. I did say if you put a little heart in your question, I would keep your name anonymous. She asks some advice for an engaged couple planning for their wedding. And while I love to plan weddings and the details and all of that, I would say my biggest piece of advice is that for every ounce of effort that you're putting into your wedding, put equal amount and more into your future marriage. Premarital counseling from someone who's trusted, and when you look at their marriage, you see it as something to aspire to. That can be really, really beneficial. But once you say I do, it's not like it's over from there. You will continue to learn, and seeking out mentorship and counseling from there is not a red flag. Marriage counseling or couples therapy gets a bad connotation that it's only for people who are in trouble. But I see it as something that's kind of like personal fitness. Like we don't just work out and take care of our bodies when we've gotten to a point where they're so bad that now we're desperate to fix something. It's a maintenance thing and it's a preventative thing. So that's the encouragement that I have for you. I'm so excited for you getting married. It's just such a wonderful thing. And I actually know this person a little bit closer, so I know a bit about the circumstances and her relationship, and I'm very, very happy for them. And there is no experience on this earth quite like marrying your best friend. And so if you just think of the effort that you're putting into the day you get married and try to match or do even more than that for your marriage itself, you will never ever regret that investment that you make. Those are some of my thoughts on that topic. And I think that does it for me today. My coffee is just about gone. I think I'm gonna down the rest and maybe do a couple more cartwheels in the front yard. My kids are inside the living room and they looked out the front window when I was doing that. Like, what are you doing? Can you teach me how to do that? So I guess we're having cartwheel lessons next. So this is where I say goodbye. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Thanks for sending in your questions on Instagram and Patreon. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring a little portion of today's video and making free content on this channel possible. I hope you all are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll catch you later.